This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again.
Yes, he's back. Jubilant scenes as Donald Trump is re-elected to the White House one more time. It wasn't the close race some had predicted. In fact, he cruised to victory with wins across the key battleground states. As the results rolled in, disappointed Kamala Harris supporters left the rally early. In the last few minutes, she's been speaking about her defeat.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
We're in one of the key swing states to find out where it all went right for Donald Trump. Getting down to business, tonight, Sir Keir Starmer has a call with the president-elect to congratulate him on his victory.
I'm in West Palm Beach, from where Donald Trump has been speaking on the phone to both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Throughout the program, we'll have reaction and analysis from across America and the world. What does a Donald Trump presidency mean for us all?
On BBC London, facing the bailiffs over unpaid dart charges. A BBC London investigation into the drivers fighting thousands of pounds in fines they say were issued in error.
Good evening to you from Washington, where Donald Trump has comfortably won the race to become this country's 47th president, in what's been described as one of the most dramatic comebacks in American political history. The polls had suggested a close race, and that perhaps there'd be days of legal wrangling over the result. None of that came to pass. Not only did Mr. Trump sweep the crucial swing states he needed, but he also won the popular vote, describing his victory as magnificent. And in the last half hour, Mr. Trump's Democratic opponent, Kamala Harris, thanked her supporters in her concession speech and said the fight to make the world a better place would continue. She said she was proud of the race she ran and that the results needed to be respected with a peaceful transfer of power. President Biden will address the nation tomorrow, while President-elect Trump has already been speaking to world leaders. Well, this is what the U.S. electoral map looked like back in 2020 when Joe Biden won the White House. The blue represents Democrat states, red Republican, and this is what it looks like tonight. Even though 3 states are still to declare, Donald Trump has already comfortably won the race, reaching the magic number in the Electoral College system of 270. He's also won the popular vote by 51% to Kamala Harris's 47%. Well, in this specially extended program, we'll take a look at Donald Trump's path to victory, from convicted felon to becoming once again the most powerful man in the world. We'll also analyze what went wrong for Kamala Harris's campaign and what Donald Trump's victory could mean for the rest of the world. Our first report tonight is from Gary O'Donoghue, who was at Donald Trump's campaign headquarters last night as the results came in.
As the results rolled in, they began to believe, bit by bit, that they could win.
What do you think?
I think it was freaking awesome! Woo!
When the key swing state of Pennsylvania was called for the former president, they could barely contain themselves.
We did it, man!
I'm not just happy, I am ecstatic.
We are so back! We're so back! This country's saved! This is an extraordinary political comeback. The former president and now future president has overcome scandal, court cases, even a brush with death, and the country has sent him back to Washington and the White House for another 4 years. He's promising a new golden age for America.
The party atmosphere grew and grew as the alcohol flowed.
Please welcome President-elect Donald J. Trump.
But it wasn't until after 2 a.m. that they got the chance to see their next president in the flesh, flanked by his whole family and his key lieutenants.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission.
For his jubilant supporters, that means mass deportation of migrants, huge tariffs on foreign goods, and ending the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East.
I will not let you down. America's future will be bigger, better, bolder, richer, safer, and stronger than it has ever been before. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Tonight has become a very different night to the one we expected. Donald Trump, victorious, without dispute.
The result came quicker than anyone or the polls had expected. While they partied hard in Florida, in Washington, a very different mood among Kamala Harris's supporters as the reality of their defeat sunk in.
So you won't hear from the vice president tonight?
Hours later, both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden called the now president-elect to congratulate him on his victory. And the vice president returned to speak to her supporters.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for. But hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright.
Donald Trump won this campaign by hugely improving his support among Hispanic voters and a significant rise among black voters too, especially men in both communities. While the vice president failed to match Joe Biden's support among women in 2020 and was held responsible by voters for years of rising prices in the shops and the highest levels of illegal migration at the southern border in decades. Donald Trump celebrated his victory with some of his key supporters, such as the world's richest man, Elon Musk. The scale of this victory was underlined by the man who will be Donald Trump's vice president.
I thank you for the trust that you placed in me. And I think that we just witnessed the greatest political comeback in the history of the United States of America.
Despite what the polls had indicated, this was no narrow victory. Donald Trump goes back to the White House for a second time, having won big. Gary O'Donoghue, BBC News, Florida.
Well, as we've been hearing, Kamala Harris has addressed her supporters here in Washington. Samira Hussain was watching. Samira, a difficult moment for her, no question about that. What did she have to say?
Well, look, this was a speech that absolutely no politician wants to give, but Kamala Harris was delivered a resounding defeat. Democrats can't even claim that they won the popular vote. And perhaps Kamala Harris deserved to speak to her audiences last night, to her supporters, but she certainly needed to speak to the country and concede this election. And in this speech, she made it very clear that she is committed to a peaceful transfer of power. She was able to strike an optimistic tone while still accepting the defeat. Now, her historic run for the White House has come to an end, but the Democrats will have to look at this crushing defeat and look inwards and really examine what went wrong and how the country, and rather how the party, comes back from it.
Indeed, Samira, thank you. Samira Hussain reporting live for us there. Well, it's 4 years since Donald Trump left the White House, just behind me there, with many suggesting his political career was over. Just a few months ago, he was convicted of business fraud over payments to the adult film star Stormy Daniels, and he's still facing several other possible prosecutions. But despite all that, Donald Trump is now set to be sworn in again as president on Inauguration Day, January the 20th next year. So, who voted for him? Well, the data suggests more women opted for Kamala Harris, but not by the margin she'd hoped, at least 54% compared with 44% for Donald Trump. He leads among white voters, the biggest single group, with Ms. Harris ahead. Among black voters, 86% chose the Democrat. Let's get more now from Sarah Smith in Florida, who's followed every twist and turn of this election. Sarah.
Yeah, and those numbers you were mentioning, Clive, they're really important for control of Congress as well, which matters if Donald Trump's to get any legislation passed. Already, Republicans have taken control of the Senate, and it looks as though they are likely to keep control of the House of Representatives. So that's a remarkable victory for Donald Trump and his Republican Party. And we've just had a statement from former President Barack Obama saying he congratulates Donald Trump on that he's obviously disappointed given his profound disagreements with the Republican ticket, but that living in a democracy means recognizing that you will not always win, but that you have to respect the peaceful transfer of power. That's a slight dig at Donald Trump there. From the mutinous glare in this infamous mugshot, an iconic image of defiance, to the bold, clenched fist thrust in the air, showing that nothing can hold him back. It was all leading to this, the most dramatic comeback in American political history. 4 years ago, refusing to accept defeat, he summoned his supporters to Washington and sent them to the Capitol.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Who's out?
The January the 6th riot destroyed Donald Trump's reputation. It could have exiled him to permanent ignominy. Appearing in court charged with a felony crime might then have killed his political career. But it resurrected it instead. His supporters believed he was being victimized by the Biden administration.
They're not after me, they're after you. I just happen to be standing in their way, and I always will stand in their way.
The breaking news, Donald Trump guilty.
A watershed moment in this nation's
His conviction only further cemented his support.
Convicted.
He's now the first criminal felon to be elected president.
Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
One simple question got right to the heart of the matter for all the people who felt much better off when he was in charge.
No matter how you spin it, you know, like some of us are working 2 to 3 jobs and not getting a lot of that family time because, you know, we have to put food on the table.
On immigration, he captured, as well as stoked, fears over the record levels of illegal immigrants streaming into America.
40% fewer.
In one sentence, he demolished Joe Biden's candidacy.
On the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
And defied death when he could so easily have been killed at a campaign rally, but came up fighting, driven by raw political instinct. He was then worshipped by supporters who saw divine intervention at work.
To elect Donald J. Trump.
He looked utterly unstoppable, but not unflappable.
People start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
Calculated jibes from his new opponent knocked him off script.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
But voters seem uniquely willing to forgive outrageous statements when they come from Donald J. Trump.
Does Donald Trump say some crazy stuff? Absolutely. Absolutely.
And does that bother you?
Well, it does, but it doesn't.
I don't know if it would be the more outrageous things he says, but I think people like that he's honest.
He's a showman in a way, right? So he's a funny guy, don't get me wrong, or some of his jokes a little on the edge, certainly, but everybody enjoys a good laugh.
His bizarre and erratic behavior.
So play YMCA. Go ahead. Let's go. Nice and loud.
Dancing, not speaking, for 40 minutes on stage.
Is that better? Is that better?
Or crass gestures when the mic wouldn't work. All formed part of the transfixing Trump show. And it worked. He performed his way right back into the White House. Sarah Smith, BBC News, West Palm Beach.
Well, in the run-up to polling day, all the focus was on the 7 key swing states. This is where the election would be decided, with speculation the race would be so close it might take days before a winner's declared. But it only took a few hours before Georgia and North Carolina declared for Mr. Trump, followed by Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. This evening, Michigan was added to that list. We're still waiting for Arizona and Nevada, but at the moment he leads in both those states too. The biggest prize was Pennsylvania, worth 19 electoral college votes and won by Joe Biden 4 years ago. From there, Tom Bateman takes a look at what persuaded voters to this time back Donald Trump.
At the steps where Kamala Harris made her final pitch, now they're packing up, defeated, and she's going home.
I voted for Kamala too as well, but I already figured Trump was going to win just due to the campaigns. I just felt like her campaigns wasn't strong enough. And also just being as though they don't want to see a woman leading in the office.
Trump outperformed Harris, particularly among men. Peter walks Coco here every day and struggled, he says, as inflation surged under Joe Biden.
Yeah, I like being able to afford groceries. I like being able to pay for gas. I like that Trump wants to, do away with income tax and replace it with tariffs and make us a much better country again.
These steps are famous from the movie Rocky. A plucky underdog takes on a heavyweight champion. But Harris just couldn't break through in this critical swing state, which her side only scraped a win 4 years ago.
Kamala Harris was trying to outperform Joe Biden in this city and therefore across the state. But in the end, Donald Trump ate into those margins, even taking voters from Harris here in Philadelphia.
Mostly concerned just right in this moment for women, for my LGBT community, for my trans friends. I'm very concerned about the future for us,
I feel like waking up, especially as a woman, my husband is distraught, but I was like, can we put it aside for a minute because I need that love and support.
Out in the suburbs, they once helped build a world superpower. Now people here think Trump will focus on America first.
If you drive through North Philly, they could have used $1 billion to fix that. And that is not even a quarter of what we spent on wars. So I believe if we aren't affected in like a personal attack or anything that affects us, we shouldn't really worry about it.
To improve for me, number one, in our place right here, our tips won't be taxed.
And what do you think? It was said during the campaign that Trump's going to be a dictator, that Kamala called him a fascist.
I don't believe all that.
In the end, Donald Trump built on his base in the rural Rust Belt and even advanced in Democrat voting Philadelphia. And his fans are now hailing a knockout blow. Tom Bateman, BBC News, Pennsylvania.
Well, as the counting took place in Pennsylvania and all those other important swing states, it became clear to Kamala Harris's supporters that any chance of victory was slipping away. Despite high-profile celebrity endorsements and a formidable ground operation to get their voters to the polls and lots of money, the Harris campaign failed. I'm in Washington, D.C., of course, a heavily Democrat area. In fact, more than 90% of the votes here were cast for Kamala Harris. The rest of America had different ideas. As America wakes up to Donald Trump's victory, the dream many had of a first woman president is over. A group of early morning joggers hit the road, one Democrat among them, shocked by the election result.
It's really scary to know what's going to happen next, and I think just feeling a lot of uncertainty and nervousness about the future.
And at the venue for Kamala Harris's overnight election watch party, there's a mournful silence. The morning after, the balloons are still up. The barriers are also in place because there should have been a victory party here at her old university for Kamala Harris. Now it's awake. I can see you have been crying.
I have been crying. I definitely have been crying.
We came across student Anna Wiggins, distraught and bewildered. How awful was it last night?
I
I think I found out about the results around like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was so crushed because letting Trump win is a vote for racism. It's a vote against women. I'm so scared. I'm terrified for this country, and I'm so hurt that America let this happen in the first place.
So why did America reject Kamala Harris?
Welcome to the Eras Tour.
Her endorsements were big and famous.
I'm supporting Kamala Harris for president.
Every single vote, every one is going to matter.
Are you ready for it?
But did any of this speak to the concerns of ordinary Americans? From rural areas to urban centers, from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt, millions felt their country was on the wrong track. Donald Trump felt their pain.
My message to Americans tonight is simple. We do not have to live this way. We don't. We don't. And we won't. We won't. We do not have to settle for weakness, incompetence, decline, and decay.
I'm sad, and we are all sad, but at the end of the day, we don't have time for solace. You got to get up and go work.
One Democratic strategist admits Republicans asked the questions Kamala Harris didn't.
So he asked people 3 things. How do you feel about immigration? How do you feel about crime? And are you better off? Is the economy better? And so people said no to those things. I don't think that's true.
But elections are about instincts and feelings as well.
I agree. But look, at the end of the day, at some point we have to look at some realities.
The first decision I made, the nominee in 2020, was selecting her as my vice president.
One reality is that Kamala Harris was fatally tied to an unpopular president. And during the campaign, she failed to make a decisive break from her boss.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
She seemed tin-eared, not only turning off moderate Republicans, but also Democrats too, black men, Latinos, younger voters.
There's a problem with the messaging. Some of it has to do with religion, some of it has to do with tradition, some of it has to do with masculinity. And so I don't know what we do yet, but we've got to figure out a way to move forward. But I don't think this is a time for the party to capitulate and move back from the progress that we want to push forward.
That post-mortem on the structural realignment of the political map we've all just witnessed begins now, as Donald Trump prepares for a second term, given a second chance.
I'll tell you what, they move pretty quick here. Just look at this. In the shadow of the White House, they're already building some of the platforms for the inauguration of the president-elect, whom, as we know, will be Donald Trump. That will take place on January the 20th in the new year. Let's go straight to Sarah Smith, who's in Florida. Sarah, such a resounding victory. What should we expect from a Trump second term?
Well, Trump made some controversial and radical proposals on the campaign trail, and now he has the mandate to be as bold as he likes. So I think very quickly you can expect swift and drastic action on the US southern border to close that and try to stop all illegal immigration. He's also pledged to try and expel all undocumented illegal immigrants living in the US. He's even talked about building camps to detain them while they await deportation. And there are other radical plans too. Not everybody knew how much of what he said to take seriously, but there are some things he is very clear he wants to do. Impose 20% tariffs on all imported goods, even higher on some of them. That's one of his very favourite policies. And he also talked a lot about using the justice system to pursue and target his political opponents, who he sees as his enemies. He wants to see them investigated, prosecuted, even possibly imprisoned. And he has the mandate to do all of this from the voters and permission, thanks to a recent ruling from the Supreme Court that says that he cannot be prosecuted for anything he does in office when he's acting as the president. So I think you're going to see some very radical actions pretty quickly from the second Donald Trump term.
And you'll be reporting on all of it. Sarah, thank you. Sarah Smith, our North America editor there. Well, back in the UK, Sir Keir Starmer also congratulated Donald Trump on his win. Downing Street said the two men spoke on the phone and agreed they'd work to ensure the special relationship between their countries continued to thrive. In the Commons, the new leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, asked the Prime Minister to apologise for previous comments by his Foreign Secretary describing Mr. Trump as a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath. Chris Mason has more.
Having access to the White House, being heard in Washington, a long-standing must-have of UK foreign policy. This a gathering in July, President Biden inviting the Prime Minister and others for dinner.
Can I first of all welcome the Leader of the Opposition?
Here at Westminster it was also a day for promotions, Kemi Badenoch making her Commons debut as Conservative leader, and the Prime Minister reacting to this morning's news.
Mr. Speaker, can I begin by congratulating President-elect Trump on his historic election victory. As the closest of allies, the UK and US will continue to work together.
And Kemi Badenoch's sentiments were similar.
So I would like to start by congratulating President-elect Trump on his impressive victory this morning.
But hang on, she and others have pointed out. Compare and contrast the Foreign Secretary's gushing congratulations to Donald Trump today, we look forward to working with you in the years ahead, with what he said in 2017, saying he'd protest on the streets if the president turned up, and saying he was a racist Nazi sympathiser. And that's not all.
And I quote, Trump is not only a woman-hating neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order.
The Foreign Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed a number of issues of global significance. It was a very constructive exercise.
Sir Ed Davey.
The Liberal Democrat leader claimed today was a dark, dark day for people around the world.
President-elect Trump praised Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and I quote, he called it genius. He also said he would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want to NATO allies.
Nigel Farage's view was rather different. It was of Florida. He was at Donald Trump's victory party. Speaking to GB News, where he works as a presenter, he had this offer for the Prime Minister.
Clearly, what the Labour government need to do is to roll out the red carpet. There is a fantastic opportunity ahead of us. And all I can say, as somebody who was a personal friend of his, has backed him all the way through his career, you know, if I can help broker a little bit of peace between the two, I'd be very happy to help.
The moment that Keir Starmer rolls out the red carpet, we will be protesting again.
Welcome to the arguments of the future. This a protest at the American Embassy in London tonight. Brash, controversy, wild unpredictability, argument and plenty of it. The new normal again. The question here tonight is what kind of relationship can the President-elect and the Prime Minister manage? Now, I'm no matchmaker, but you have a socialist former human rights lawyer from North London and a brash real estate billionaire from New York. They don't have character compatibility oozing out of them. Nonetheless, they've spoken on the phone tonight, the Prime Minister congratulating Donald Trump. Some pictures released by Downing Street of that call. Now, usually the descriptions of these calls are pretty bland and anodyne, but a couple of words struck me, Clive. Talk of the Prime Minister offering his hearty congratulations that the two had fondly recalled meeting in September. A real sense of emphasising a warmth, even a bonhomie, and also a nod to Donald Trump's affinity for and connections to the UK. His mum was born on the Hebridean island of Lewis. Now, that is sound diplomacy to do that, but whether that counts for anything with an America First president is the big question.
Indeed. Character compatibility, we'll see. All right, Chris, thank you. Chris Mason there, live at Westminster. On the financial markets, US shares hit record highs on Wall Street and the dollar surged against the pound and euro on the news of Donald Trump's re-election. But the European markets closed down. Faisal Islam is in central London. Faisal, what's been going on?
Yes, Clive, significant consequences of this huge decision for the world economy. Immediately, as you've been saying, we saw a surge in the value of the US currency, the dollar, but also a surge in the value of US stock markets, including some going to an all-time high, as calculations were made that certain American companies will do quite well out of a Trump presidency that is less onerous on regulation, that's going to write the rules of the road on artificial intelligence and autonomous driving, and may let these companies do more of what they want than a Democrat government would have done. An example is Tesla, 10% owned by that famous Donald Trump supporter Elon Musk, up $110 billion in value. Elon Musk's stake up about $14 billion. So that instinct you can see in the stock market. Something very different in the borrowing markets, where there are fears of trillions of dollars of debt pushing up US interest rates. You can see that too. And then there's the big one, which is the upset to the world trade system that would be caused not by a targeted trade war aimed at, say, China in a specific sector, but a general trade tariff imposed on everybody that would raise serious questions to the UK about whether to, if you like, side with the US or Europe, or try and be peacemaker in the middle and risk being caught in the crossfire.
Okay, Faisal, thank you for that. Faisal Islam there, our economics editor. We've already talked about Sir Keir Starmer speaking on the phone to the president-elect, while many other world leaders have been congratulating Donald Trump on his victory. Ukraine's President Zelensky said he hoped the new president's approach could bring peace in his country closer, while Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu praised the win as a new beginning. European leaders were quick to offer congratulations, although there is some private concern about what his victory could mean for European security. As Jeremy Bowen reports.
During his first term, Donald Trump often alarmed his allies with sometimes impulsive and naive overtures towards the world's strongmen, here with Kim Jong-un, the ruler of North Korea.
And then we fell in love, okay? No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters.
Trump always wants to be the biggest man in the room, but he'll face more complicated challenges now than the first time round, since the summit in Finland in 2018, when he met Russia's President Putin. America's authoritarian rivals are now forming an axis. Putin couldn't fight the war in Ukraine without help from North Korea and China. Trump might find the plan he pushed repeatedly during his presidential campaign this year to end the war simply doesn't work.
I will have that war finished and done and settled before I get to the White House as president-elect. I will get that done.
Ukraine's President Zelensky couldn't fight on against Russia without American military aid. Zelensky will fear Joe Biden's arms supplies might be replaced with Trump's arm twisting to concede land to Russia to make a deal. On social media, Zelensky offered congratulations and appealed to Trump's self-image as a strong leader. For Ukraine, peace through strength is another way of asking for more weapons. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has also taught America's Western European allies a hard lesson, that without US military power, they would struggle to defend themselves. Trump will redouble the demands of his first term, that the Europeans need to spend more on defense. If not, he might threaten once again to take the US out of NATO. From the Middle East came congratulations from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on what he called history's greatest comeback. Israel needed a lot of American help to defend itself against Iranian missiles. The Israelis couldn't fight on multiple fronts without US military and diplomatic support. President Biden would not use that leverage to insist on a ceasefire. Middle East watchers here in Washington believe he might want to impose an American agenda on Israel's.
The Middle East is also on the edge of drawing America into another major war in the Middle East. And I don't think Donald Trump, based on his record, wants that. So it's not that he cares about Palestinians or cares about Lebanon or cares about Iran. He may very well not agree with the theory of the case that Bibi Netanyahu has, which is to expand the war and, if need be, draw the United States into it.
China will be a major challenge in the second Trump term. Since his state visit to President Xi Jinping in Beijing in 2017, China has made bigger strides towards rivaling America as the world's strongest power. On the eve of the election, Trump repeated his plan to put a big tax on imports from China and others, also known as a trade war.
And I'm doing the same thing with China. We're going to tariff the hell out of them.
Longer term, a real war is another risk, with growing military tension between China and Taiwan. Before he leaves office, Donald Trump might have to decide whether America will fight to defend an island 7,000 miles away across the Pacific. It's only 100 miles from the Chinese mainland. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Washington.
So, a promise to end the war in Ukraine before he even steps into the White House in January, plus uncertainty over how Donald Trump plans to work with Europe and NATO. In a moment, we'll speak to Katya Adler in Budapest. But first, Steve Rosenberg is in Sochi in southern Russia. Steve, first of all, what does this victory for Donald Trump mean, do you think, for Vladimir Putin?
Well, we might find that out from the man himself tomorrow, Clive, because Vladimir Putin is expected here in the mountains around Sochi tomorrow at an event. He's expected to give his reaction to Donald Trump's election victory. Now, I know that Russian officials today have been working overtime trying to play things down and create the impression, and it's only an impression, I think, that everything is okay. But actually, I think unpredictability is a big concern in Russia with Donald Trump. They remember what happened in Trump's first term. There were big hopes. They were dashed. And in fact, the headline in one Russian newspaper tomorrow reads like this: Donald Trump is an unguided missile. He could fly in any direction. So there is concern about what Donald Trump could mean for Russia. On the other hand, I think Vladimir Putin will be hoping that, since Donald Trump doesn't preach about human rights and democracy, that will be a good sign for him. And there's also hope, I think, in Russia that the relationship between Trump and Putin will work in Moscow's favor eventually.
All right, Steve, thank you for that. Steve Rosenberg there in Sochi. To you, Katya, you're in the Hungarian capital, Budapest, where European leaders are meeting for a pre-planned summit to include Keir Starmer. What do you think they'll be saying about Donald Trump's victory?
Well, yes, this is one of twice-yearly meetings between EU leaders and non-EU European leaders. So yes, Sir Keir Starmer, but also Volodymyr Zelensky will be here. And the host of the meeting, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, is a huge Trump fan. So we're hearing rumours in government circles that he's trying to organise a video call with Donald Trump tomorrow. But whether or not these European leaders talk to Donald Trump, they will definitely, Clive, be talking about him. Yes, they rush to congratulate him, but many here are concerned for three main reasons. One, security, because Europe looks to the US for defence when it comes to expansionist Russia or defending Ukraine. But Donald Trump is not a fan of NATO, the transatlantic military alliance. Number two concern, trade. For the EU, the US is its biggest trade partner, and Donald Trump is protectionist. He loves trade tariffs, and that is bad news for already sluggish European economies like Germany with its car industry. And the third worry is unity, because Donald Trump does not like to be faced by a strong, united Europe. Brussels, in particular, is worried that individual member states might rush to secure good relations with Donald Trump at the expense of the EU and weakening the bloc.
OK, Katya, thank you. Katya Adler there in Budapest, and to you, Steve, as well. Many thanks in Sochi. Time now for a look at the weather news, and Louise has the latest. Hi.
Hi there, Clive. You've not been missing much in terms of the weather in London. Look at this. We barely saw the tops of the skyscrapers today. It stayed pretty misty all day. But further north and west, it was a very mild November day with temperatures in Fermanagh peaking at 18 Celsius. And we keep that mild air with us through the night. In fact, across western areas, temperatures not falling away from double figures. In Stornoway, 13 Celsius, that's in the Western Isles of Scotland. Their average in November is 3 degrees. So an incredibly mild night to come. All because of this area of high pressure still staying with us. The position of the winds changing subtly over the next few days. A southerly wind will continue to drive in that milder air, but it will be a breezier story tomorrow out to the west. That potentially will break up the cloud across southwest England and Wales and the best of the sunshine into northern Scotland. Elsewhere, a misty start, lifting once again to low grey cloud, but those temperatures still quite promising. 12 to 14 degrees out where we've got the sunshine, mid, possibly high teens in one or two spots yet again. Into Friday, the wind direction changes a bit more to a southeasterly, and hopefully that might break the cloud up just a touch, but don't expect too much in the way of sunshine. Brief glimpses of sunshine, I suspect, on Friday, and as a result, because the wind coming from the southeast, perhaps not quite as warm. But as we stretch into the weekend, it'll be subtle differences once again. This weather front will start to move in from the west. It's going to introduce more in the way of showery outbreaks of rain through the second half of the weekend. So Saturday, we keep the cloudy skies. Sunday, there could be some rain around. Hopefully that front, as it pushes through, will give us some sunshine. Clive.
Louise, thank you for that. Louise Leah there. There's more reaction to Donald Trump's victory on Newsnight, which is underway on BBC Two now. Here's Victoria.
Join us for an extended Newsnight special on what's changed and what will change. Guests include one of the US's biggest pro-Trump influences, Kamala Harris's political mentor, Piers Morgan, and Donald Trump's nephew. You don't want to miss it. 10:30, BBC Two and BBC iPlayer.
Before you switch over, though, what a momentous election campaign this has been. Donald Trump has defied his critics and comfortably secured a second term as U.S. president. No one has done that, lost the White House and won it again for more than 130 years. We leave you tonight with images from the past 24 hours as Donald Trump's historic win unfolded. Have a peaceful night.
It is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy?
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
Polls are now closed across all 50 states. Former President Donald Trump and Republicans are having a very good night.
People are getting more and more anxious.
Well, it's the converse here because people are getting increasingly excited.
Fight! Fight! Fight!
This is a pretty bleak picture for the Democrats.
Donald Trump has been elected 47th President of the United States.